for the Board of Ordained Ministry, and you have a sermon that you're going to record and present to us, and you want to do the best job possible, and we want you to do the best job possible. So just a few quick things, and I don't mean to be condescending or anything else, but the first and most important thing, and I've been on the Board of Ordained Ministry for 4 years now, and some of this will be what I've seen that have tripped some people up. And the first thing is read the instructions. You wouldn't believe how many times we've had somebody come through and it was obvious that they hadn't followed some of the instructions, and that becomes an issue with the board. So please read all of the instructions and follow them. You need to plan for this service. You need to involve others, as the instructions say. I know we're in the midst of a pandemic and you may not be using a bulletin right now, but we really want to see a bulletin. We want to see how you have planned for this particular worship service. Remember, you've got to preach this sermon. It has to be a sermon that you preach somewhere between July 1 and December 31 of this year. Don't reach back and grab some old sermon and send it to us. We'll figure it out in a hurry. The second thing that I found that has tripped some people up is not using your own material or borrowing material from somebody else. Your sermon manuscript or whatever you submit to us will be sent through Authenticate, and it really catches things. So I would suggest that, particularly for this sermon, I mean, all of us pastors sometimes tell jokes and use illustrations that we've heard somewhere else, but I think it's important that you use your own illustrations and your own words when you bring this sermon to us for the Board of Ordained Ministry. Also, really think hard about how the text that you have chosen speaks to your context, to the situation today, or in that day that you might be preaching. What's going on? How can you bring in something from maybe you've read in the newspaper? I had a Bible professor at Greensboro College who used to say that you need to look at everything that happens in your life, every movie you watch, every TV show, everything that happens, everything you read, with theological eyes. And how can you include those things in what you say, especially and do, especially in a sermon? So please keep that in mind as you're planning for your sermon for the Board of Ordained Ministry. The other thing I would strongly suggest is that whatever kind of video equipment you're using, if it's an iPhone or if it's equipment in your church, that you practice the sermon and go back and listen to yourself. I listen to myself. Sometimes it's painful, but by listening to myself, I have caught myself and have corrected some little tics that I might do. I had a tendency at one time to rub my mustache a lot while I was preaching, and I stopped doing that, I hope. And so watch your videos, listen to what you're saying, and it'll also give you an opportunity, especially as you prepare to present your sermon to the Board of Ordained Ministry, to say, that line of thinking is not clear, or there's not a good segue from this section to the next section. And so you've got every opportunity to get ready to present a really, really good sermon to the Board of Ordained Ministry. I said this earlier, but there's really no best sermon model, in my opinion. I know some pastors and lay people find this so impressive when a person can come down and stand in the middle of the floor with no notes and preach a sermon. But I'll be honest with you, I've heard a lot of bad sermons because pastors have thought they needed to preach off the cuff when they would have been better off to have notes or a manuscript and to really stick to that so that there's clarity of thought and flow. Think about the listener. the people who are going to be listening to you. Every context is different, and you probably have to deliver a different, I know you have to deliver a different sermon if you're in a small church in Clay County versus a church in Charlotte, North Carolina. So think about your context and your delivery in that context and the people that you're preaching to. We want to see that. We want you to talk to us about that. We will ask you questions about that. And the Board of Ordained Ministry also wants you to get some feedback from those who have heard your sermon. And so we're going to be interested in that feedback too, and it'll be a part of our conversation. So those are really the most important things that I want to say to you.